Okay, thanks very much for doing this today. I appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Yeah, so you were rehearsing, what are you rehearsing for?
We have the first of our Marillion weekend conventions coming up in Holland in about 3 weeks' time, where we play 3 concerts over 3 nights, and we have people flying in from all around the world, about 2,000, nearly 3,000 people, all congregate and on this site, this holiday place in the Netherlands, Centre Parks. So we take over the whole facility and have a huge tent that's put up, and it's just like a weekend of concerts and fun and partying, really. We have one a couple of weeks later in Montreal, and then a third one about 3 weeks after that in the UK. Wow,
it does go back quite a ways, is that right?
Yeah. We had the first one, I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago now, and it's been a great success. It's got bigger each year, sells out pretty much within the first sort of few weeks of being announced, and it's a lot of fun. I think a lot of people come as much for the social experiences as for the concerts, because it's a great atmosphere. All your most dedicated fans all grouped together, just having a great time, really.
That's very cool, very cool. Now, let's talk a little bit about this new DVD that's going to be coming out here. When you recorded Less is More, did you envision doing a whole tour that reimagined other songs from the catalog as well?
We hadn't really thought it through, I suppose, when we first made the album. I mean, we knew that sometimes we do sort of a slightly similar thing when the 3 of us go out as Los Trios, and you kind of do acoustic or cut down versions. So we knew that there was some existing arrangements that would probably work well in that context. But yeah, it was only kind of when we started rehearsing for the tour that we sort of made a decision over which songs we were going to include.
Right. How do you weed through such a big catalog? I mean, what was your starting point?
Well, I mean, probably like I say, the existing songs we've already played down in a stripped down way, but I suppose also you kind of look at the songs that are on Less is More and think, well, what's going to complement those? And you kind of, you just go through your catalogue and try a few things, really.
Mm-hmm. This involves such unusual instrumentation in some cases. Where did the ideas come from, and to apply those kinds of instruments? Are they things that you're already interested in, or were you deliberately reaching way outside of your normal scope?
Well, I mean, we had a few of them lying around, but I think once we decided to make this record, I think it was probably our producer Mike Hunter that pushed us into going the whole sort of hog, if you like, and using such a wide collection of unusual instruments. I mean, nearly all of my stuff's just on guitar, although I did do some stuff on Portuguese guitar as well, on a couple of tracks. But yeah, everybody else got very adventurous in terms of glockenspiels and xylophones and all sorts of wonderful keyboard instruments. Mark bought a huge church organ on eBay, which is still taking up most of one wall of the studio. It's quite spectacular. I don't think he actually used it on the record, but it was that sort of mad scientist idea that he had to build this thing.
How funny! I wouldn't have ever thought that a church organ would be available on eBay necessarily.
No, he went up there in a van and picked it up and spent quite a while rebuilding it. That
is funny.
You have to take a hacksaw to the tubes to tune it. It's quite a sight.
It's not the most portable instrument, needless to say.
No, you wouldn't really want to tour with it, put it that way, not unless you had a week between gigs.
Yeah. Now, what are the challenges of going out and presenting this live with such a radical shift in the instruments that you're carrying and stuff? Does that change the way that you actually pack up and tour at all?
Well, it's obviously in some ways it's a lot less equipment than the full rig. In terms of performing it, it's a different kind of challenge because everything is so exposed. You really have to focus and try and make every part as good as it can be, because it's all sort of very much sort of interactive in terms of a performance. But it was fun to do. I mean, we played different kinds of venues, because we played a lot of classical music venues on the European tour with it. So it was a pleasant change. You can maybe at times you might get frustrated because you would like to rock out a little bit, and we do that occasionally in the encores. But I mean, compared to a full electric set, it's pretty sedate. But it was fun. It was fun to do.
It's it's beautiful. The ambience and then just the differences in the way it's presented. It's really beautiful and quite unique. It's not like every band has done this particular kind of a thing, you know.
Yeah, no, I think we took it in an interesting direction. It's not just the kind of MTV Unplugged type concept. It's something a little bit more radical and unusual.
Yeah. Now, Marillion fans are just notoriously loyal, and they've stuck with the band through a really large number of musical changes. Do you ever wonder on the front end of a project, are we taking a step too far here? Are we asking the fans to accept too much of a radical shift here?
You can't really stop and worry about that, really. I think at the end of the day, you've got to try and make music that excites and interests you, and hope that you're going to take at least a fair percentage of your audience with you.
Yeah.
I think once you start kind of tailoring your music for what you perceive your audience wants, I think that's kind of a kiss of death, artistically and creatively. So, you know, I mean, you can go to extremes and make an album of white noise, you know, but I mean, we're not really that way inclined. So it's sort of like a gentle evolutionary or diversion in terms of directions with us. But it's good. It's great to have that freedom, and of course we only have that freedom because, you know, we're not having to satisfy a record company. So it's very unusual for a band in our position to be in this situation where we can be so completely independent.
Yeah, as long as your fans stick with you, I mean, that's you have the full reign to do as you like. That's really great.
Well, I mean, we're doing well so far. I mean, considering the state of the industry and the way that CD sales are generally plummeting, I think there's a lot to be said for having a really dedicated fan base that wants you to continue and are willing to put their hands in their pockets and support you by buying your product direct or buying the pre-orders or these convention tickets. It makes a huge difference.
You embraced the internet, you know, way before the labels were seriously dying in the way that they are now. I mean, they were dying over a slow period of time, but you got way in front of the curve. A lot of artists are experiencing the other side of the hand, which is a lot of artists have been killed by not getting in front of it, and the internet has taken away the sales that they did have.
It is a problem, I think, for all artists, and I don't really see it as a solution. I think it's just how most of the general public perceive the value of music now. You know, we kind of live in a world where there used to be MTV was a very powerful influence on a certain generation, and these days the kids, if they're interested in the band, they'll just go find the video on YouTube. You know, if they're interested in the music, they'll find it on Last.fm or Spotify or Pandora, probably in the States. So you know, you can't kind of control the way that music is perceived, I think, anymore. It used to be with certain generations, the buying the product was part of the experience. In the old days of vinyl, you had your gatefold sleeves, and you look at the lyrics and the photos on there, and it was all part of the immersive experience of getting a new album and really sort of listening to it quite intensely. Where I think maybe for the sort of later generations, that music doesn't, I mean, they might enjoy it, but in some ways they're not, you know, other things have taken over, really, I think, in terms of technology or computer games or just the internet, really. I mean, there's so much sort of constant stream of stimulation for them, depending on what they want to do, that you know, music doesn't have the same power maybe for those generations.
Yeah, well, it's gone back to the original paradigm where it's totally singles driven because people aren't even aware of whole albums. It seems like mostly, you know.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you just cherry pick the single really, and the other thing as well, due to the nature of the industry, I mean, quite often I see only half decent track on the record.
Yeah,
which maybe the other thing that's a factor in dwindling CD sales, apart from the greed of major labels and file sharing, is that there's not much really interesting music out there anymore, other than sort of the independents.
That's probably so. Now, like I said, you got way in front of that, and Marillion was one of the first bands to really begin directly marketing to its fan base. Do you think that's part of the secret of how you've weathered this in a way that a lot of bands have not?
Yeah, I think it is a major part of it to have it's more than just music with these fans. I mean, a lot of them have followed us for a long time, but we are still getting new fans all the time. But I think it's partly down to the kind of music we make. It's not pop music. It's something that has a lot of sort of depth and a lot of atmosphere, and I think once people are never really lukewarm about our music. They either don't like it, in which case you usually haven't heard it, or it's just not their thing, or if they're into it, they're into it with a complete passion, and they think nothing of flying around to the other side of the world to see us perform because we haven't toured in their country.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, we've talked before about not touring in America being down to, just the expense. Is that a fair assessment, that it just is so expensive to get over here now?
It is, but we have a strategy that we're pursuing at the moment, and I can't really give too much away, but we're looking into possibilities of coming over next year and touring with another artist, sort of dual headliner situation. And so far, that's kind of looking pretty promising. So, more news soon.
Well, that would be great. The band you certainly have some very, very, very passionate American fans, but you've never had that big break in America. Why did that not happen back during the Capitol years like it did everywhere else?
I think you need so much exposure. I mean, the only real exposure we had was Katie got a reasonable amount of airplay before it was pulled due to a sort of payola scandal that was on the national news with Capitol. But other than that, I don't know, maybe it's partly how Capitol marketed the band in the early days. It's partly the nature of the industry. Maybe nobody was writing the blank checks that you need to kind of make inroads, and maybe it's partly the band's fault. We should have just kind of come over and toured around for 6 months. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, it'd be interesting to see, because it's been a few years now since we have toured, other than the sort of the acoustic tour that we did. It'd be interesting to see what kind of response we'd get now, and whether or not the internet, in a way, has increased our profile, even though we haven't actually toured there. So yeah, we're looking into the possibilities for next year at the moment.
That's very cool. Now, it seems like progressive rock, if you will, is kind of getting a second listen right now. A little bit of a critical and historical reassessment that's been long overdue, in a lot of ways. Do you find that to be so, and does that affect Marillion at all?
I think there's a few people that now own up to having progressive rock influences or loving progressive rock. It's not quite as dirty a word as it once was. But there's a lot of interesting artists out there that have elements of prog in what they do. I mean, Six Monsters, for example. Elbow is a UK band. So I don't think it's not a dirty word, but I mean, it all depends what you mean by that. I think there is a movement that is kind of very generic derivative sort of prog rock, and I think that doesn't do anybody any favours. But the artists are out there that are trying to do something fresh and interesting with the genre. I think it shows that there is still a lot of life in it, really. And my whole philosophy on progressive rock is that it doesn't. It's not about any particular style. It's not about whether you have a section in 7/8 or you have mellotrons or bass pedals or mini Moog solos. It's more a state of mind, and you could really be playing about with any particular genre of music, but you could bring this openness and this spiritual adventure to that, and hopefully make something interesting from it.
Right. Yeah, it fascinates me that much of what's classed as progressive rock is actually regressive in nature, because it's people doing 70s progressive rock now.
Exactly. Yeah, I've just not really got any time for that, really. It just seems utterly pointless.
Yeah. That brings another question up that gets asked about Marillion all the time, because obviously Fish was in the band, and then that's been 24 years ago. Is that right? That he's been gone?
Fish left in '88.
Yeah,
so 23.
Really, really long time ago. And yet there's still factions of the fan base that's their period or whatever. Fans ask all the time, to one degree or another, is Marillion still progressive rock, and is it still the same band, because it's wandered so far away from that part of its career?
Yeah, well, I suppose the thing is we've made 11 albums with Steve, and we made 4 albums with Fish, so if there hadn't been a movement away from those first 4 albums, then it would be pretty sad. We'd be plowing the same furrow. And I think as you develop as a writer and a musician, you always have this thing of expanding your horizons musically. And I think there's enough variety in what we've done over the years, from I suppose the more commercial stuff on the Holidays in Eden to the darker stuff on Brave, to an album like Afraid of Sunlight, which I still think is probably our strongest collection of songs.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think people should sort of hanker back to the old days. I think some of those early songs were great. I think there's something very special about a lot of them. But some people, for some people, the band died when sort of Fish left. But you're always going to have that when you have a major change. You're not going to worry about that. You're just going to move forward and try and create as good a work as you can.
Right. I mean, really, if somebody wants that period, they can go to a Fish gig, and he's basically redoing some of those records live anyway. I mean,
he is. Yeah, maybe in a slightly lower key, but
or extremely lower key. Yeah.
Sorry, it was up there. Yeah, anyway. Yeah.
That's funny. Getting back to this live DVD, what did you finance the recording of this yourselves, the filming and everything else?
Oh yeah, no, we finance everything these days.
That's what I thought.
So we've got a great team of people now. I mean, Tim who filmed it also films our conventions.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Hunter recorded it and mixed it. It's great. Yeah, I mean, it's for an artist in our position to have our own studio, have our own access to these top people. It's one of the reasons we can still survive.
This was the final night of this tour. Does that mean, if something gets screwed up, there's really no reshoots the next night or whatever? Does that put additional pressure on you?
Well, yeah, I mean, we did shoot both of the two nights.
Okay.
We used, I think all of the second night. But we're pretty consistent as a band, other than like a technical problem. Once you kind of get into the zone, especially after the first 2 or 3 concerts, it's normally okay. I mean, we're all on in-ear monitors, and we have our own little personal avian mixers, so you can set up your balance so you can hear each other absolutely perfectly, and that really, really does help in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Very good, very good. What are the technical challenges of going into a venue like that and setting it up? I mean, you've recorded live before, obviously, but there's always going to be differences in rooms and how they come off.
That's a pretty good room, because it's used all the time by the BBC for their classical music recordings. So I don't know what the situation was in terms of tie lines to a recording area, but I don't think there was any real sort of technical challenges. The people at the venue were very obliging, which isn't always the case. It was pretty painless, actually.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. Are you comfortable being filmed? I mean, have you done it enough that you're comfortable? Because I know guys who've been filmed a number of times who still can't stand it.
You just really got to ignore it, really. You just got to focus on what you're doing. I think, when there's not the sort of band, really, that's going to start, posing for the cameras. Well, most of us anyway. So you just concentrate on your gig, and you concentrate on the audience. You're performing to the audience. You're not really performing to the cameras. You're hoping something great's going to happen, and the cameras can in some way capture that.
What happens now? I mean, you've talked about the conventions. You've talked about possibly touring here. What kind of are you working on? New recordings or writing new things for the band right now?
Yeah, we're writing the next album. We're jamming every day before we start rehearsals. And we're going to be continuing to do that throughout the rest of the year. We have some concerts in Germany in November, and probably a few in the UK in December. And we'll probably spend the rest of this year writing the record and probably start recording it early next year. Hopefully it will come out before next summer. That's our sort of very rough strategy. But I think when you kind of get to the situation we're in, it's more important for you to make the strongest possible record than it is within any sort of time frame. If you can survive financially, the greatest luxury you can have as a musician is the time to try and do your best work.
Yeah, and you're not in that position where you have to hand a record into a company that's contracted for it.
Exactly. Yeah. So we really can take as long as it takes. I mean, I hope it's not going to take too long, because I think you can kind of lose sight of things if you're working on a record for too long. But there's some very strong ideas, and there's still great creativity within the band. So I'm sure we'll have something great.
Any hints as to the direction of how this material might take?
Oh, not really, no. Impossible to say. I'd like to think it was a bit more guitar on the next record. That's the only thing I could kind of comment on, really, in terms of the direction.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about this new DVD collection, or anything else that's going on?
I mean, I think there's trailers on YouTube if anyone wants to check it out. It's probably the best filming and the best sound of any live event that we've done. We actually had a preview of it at a cinema in the Midlands in Wolverhampton, and it looked fantastic on the big screen, and sounded great. I'm sure if people give it a chance, they will really enjoy it. Other than that, no. I mean, the only other thing I'd say is the thing that I've started over here, the British Guitar Academy, which I'm kind of looking to bring to the States as well at some point. I've had a lot of interest. And I'm kind of working with other British musicians in name bands, and we're kind of doing these workshop ideas. And the sort of the website's going to be quite an important part of that, where I'm going to have sort of free lessons and equipment reviews, as well as more subscription-based sort of teaching. So anybody that plays, or anybody wants to know how to play a Marillion song, they just drop me an email.
Very good. And that website's not up yet, but it's coming, is it?
There's just like the holding site up at the moment. The website, because we had the first two events a few weeks ago, so there's some video and some stuff from that's going to be going up, but it's just BritishGuitarAcademy.com.
Oh, okay. Very good. Well, thank you very much for doing this today.
No problem.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, hopefully, if we can get over next year, we'll share a beer or two.